It'd be a shame if these broadcasts drop it.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, You owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS. Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Apex Racing TV's presentation of the Radical Racing Challenge. J.R. Gregory here on the call. Beside me in the commentary booth, as always, Racing Ron Mons, and in the production carrier, our friend and colleague, Joshua Wilkie. And Radical Racing Challenge, the star here today, as always, the Radical SR10, 425 horsepower, only 725 kilos, no traction control, no ABS, a handful on the best of days, and mastering this car will make you a better driver. And folks, we are showing the top split of the iRacing public server for this series, as we always do at 2100 GMT on Friday. So this is not a league event. This is not a private event. This is a public server. So if you'd like to stop by and test your skills against some of the best radical racers in the world, go ahead and do that. We've got some, we are in week 11, but next week is a favorite track as our finale. We're visiting the green hell itself, Nordschleife. So if you'd like to take these cars for a whirl, you won't regret it. They are fantastic. And speaking of fantastic, we are here in week 11 at Mosport, a tailor-made track for this car. These fast Sweeping corners are really fantastic with these radicals, taking advantage of the mechanical grip and of the aero of these cars. Mosport opened in 1961, so drivers have been testing their mettle here for about 60 years. Over its illustrious history, it has hosted Can-Am, Trans Am, and Formula One, as well as MotoGP. Currently, race fans will know that there is a pretty good IMSA race that occurs here every year. Our configuration today, 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers, and 10 corners. The lap record for this current configuration is held by Marco Werner in an Audi R10. And yes, that means that those P1 cars from the dominant Audi era of sports car racing are actually faster than the late 70s Formula One cars. So, Ron, I always look forward to this track. It is really tailor-made for these radicals, and there's really only kind of one problem area, I would say, for these cars. They don't like woeing down, as is required, into the Moss corner, but otherwise a fantastic track for these cars. And one of my favorite things I'm looking forward to in this race is that outside pass off the straightaway into turn 8 as the defender tries to cover the inside. Guarantee you we're going to see some of that today. So what are your thoughts heading into this one?
Well, I think trying to sum up my thoughts on what kind of racing action we might see later on this evening, I kind of flash back to the race we had here last season. That was, of course, the season finale, where we had a fantastic battle where drivers tried to go for the overtake going into the third to last corner, and it just did not pay off for any of the drivers. So I think we're going to see a little bit of real tough racing. We might see some drivers breaking their elbows out a little bit and being and banging and roughing each other up a little bit, but we might also see some action here at this very tight and very tricky complex going over the hill, trying to woe these cars up quite badly and trying to negotiate those very high curbs with not a whole lot of runoff area to speak of. So that might be a flashpoint on this track. We'll just have to see. Certainly on lap 1, that'll probably be a very tricky spot for those drivers to get through clean. But this track is fairly old school in its nature. It's, as you said, held so many great events over the years, still holds IMSA, and of course this layout and this version that we have here is a little bit different than what we have currently. A lot more asphalt runoff to speak of, so it has a bit of an old school flair, while the oldest scans still being run on iRacing, but it's still an old school style track, and I think it'll lead to some old school racing as well. I don't think these drivers are going to worry too much about the integrity of their cars. They're just going to try and fight and claw for every position they can, and I think it'll lead to some great racing here in a few moments' time.
Yeah, it ought to, and we were just riding along with Friedrich, and Friedrich is sitting P2 on the season so far. Our season leader, James Berry, is not with us today for the 2100 GMT Friday broadcast. Apparently, he is tied up in another radical event. So Friedrich is your early favorite here, as you see from qualifying, has put down a 112.8, which is cooking around here, and a full second, or no, that's my bad math skills, about a half a second now ahead of Gonzaga in P2, and Kadura in P3 is nipping on Gonzaga's heels. And here we are in the famous Moss corner, difficult double right-hander leading on to the Andretti straight, and this is one of the areas where we're going to see some heavy drafting. And as I was saying before, there is a passing opportunity at the end of the straightaway here. What you'll see most drivers do is try to cover the inside, but it is possible to make the outside pass work here. You've got to have some stones to pull it off, but we have seen it done. So I'm looking forward to some disputes over the entry to turn 8 here, and qualifying still rolling. We're riding along with Kenji Murata now, is back in P11, trying to see if he can improve that. He just needs a 300ths right now to move up into the top 10 in terms of qualifying. And I'm seeing the checker now here on qualifying. Interesting. Okay, well, I don't think we got the full 8 minutes there, but people must have decided that they had done the best that they could do. So we're going to grid them up now. We're ticking down to the green light, and you see Friedrich there. He's in viewers left here, so he's going to have the inside line into turn 1 on the start. And there is your starting grid. It's Andreas Friedrich in P1. Felix Simoes has snuck up into P2 there. Behind Friedrich will be Jorge Gonzaga, a longtime runner here with this group. And then P4 looks like Kadura, Weaver, and Walters behind them in row 3. Zyalanka, not a familiar name to me, in P7. Kyriakopoulos in P8. Perez and Lowe in 9 and 10. Kenji Murata and Lawrence Reagan are in the next row there. Randy Torres and Zengers in 13 and 14. And in the back row, Daniel Bonovitz and Jerome Lardeau, a couple other unfamiliar names. So take that as a good sign. We get some new participants here and maybe fatten up this field a little bit for next year. But as we wait on the green lights here, and again, taking a look at Friedrich with Samoa slightly offset behind him to his left. And no pace lap here, obviously, so we'll be taking a standing start on ice-cold tires, going through a challenging turn 1 and an even more challenging, famously so, turn 2, as the cars will stream left over the rise, which is right at the apex, and commonplace to see incidents there. So we'll see if we can get away clean.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Let's see. I mean, this track hasn't been the friendliest for these drivers in the past, so we'll see what happens here in a few moments' time as the final drivers are lining up on the grid.
And there's your starting lights, and we're going to ride along with Friedrich here on the start, see if he can get away. And there we go. We are green. Looks like a pretty good launch from Friedrich. And again, he's got that inside covered. He's got Gonzaga sniffing around behind him. And Samoas has snuck around the outside of turn 1 and knocked Friedrich off of that P1 position. And we've seen Friedrich struggling on a couple of starts recently. And that has held true again here, as Samoas is going to lead the field into the back section here. So it's Samoas from Friedrich, Gonzaga, Walters, Kadura, and Zyalanka from Weaver, from Kyriakopoulos, Perez, and Lowe are your top 10. And boy, Friedrich not getting that car off the line again, Ron. It was surprising to see that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't think it was Friedrich getting a really bad start as much as those Samoas getting a great one. He's a name that would be familiar to these people who've tuned into these Friday broadcasts here on Apex in the past. He absolutely dominated Season 2 earlier this year, so he may be very good with those low grip conditions, so that could be the reason why he got a good start. He just has to manage his stuff and try and hold on to that lead, but we've got a battle here between Friedrich and Samoas as they go side by side coming into turn 8, but it's not close enough there. So Samoas holds on to the lead going through the final series of corners, and he is going to start lap 1 in the lead of this race. Meanwhile, farther behind, there was some kind of incident involving Torres. He had a off in turn 2, went for a little bit of lawn mowing, but managed to keep it out of the wall, but he's currently running well far back of the rest of the field, currently 15 seconds behind Felix Samoas, who's leading this race right now and setting a very good pace for himself right now. Meanwhile, farther behind, that's a massive crash there for Kadura. He just barely avoids getting hit by anyone else and rejoins the track safely. Meanwhile, you can see Torres well far behind the field. So Kadura there having a very tough start. Not sure what happened there. We might have to get a replay between turn 1 and 2, which the exit of turn 1 is very tricky for these drivers to get right. That killer curb on the outside can bite you if you run a little bit wide and be a little bit too flirtatious with that throttle pedal. So I think we might get a replay here to see what happened with Samir Kadura. He's coming through the first corner now. He's getting the dirty air from the car ahead, goes onto the grass, tried to keep it flat out, and goes deep into the wall, runs through the grass, spins it, and hits the wall very hard there. So he's gonna have a very battered Radical SR10 there, but he will rejoin the race, albeit well down the order.
Yeah, that is a big hit suffered by Kadura there, and this track is not a good one to take on body damage that can impact the aerodynamic efficiency of these cars. With that long back straight, we may see these other competitors gapping Kadura if he has damaged that Radical, and I can't imagine that not being the case after that big hit into the concrete barrier. Amazing that the car is still rolling around the track and has not had to take a tow.
Yeah, I'm shocked too. That was a massive hit straight into concrete, no tire barriers deflecting that hit at all. But Kadura right now is really struggling pace-wise, still running well down the order, hasn't caught up at all. So I think Kadura is basically for a sense pretty much done for this race, so he'll be relegated down the order. Meanwhile, we were seeing some side-by-side action there involving Weaver, Kyriakopoulos, and Perez there coming through the start-finish straightaway and through the first series of corners. So right now it's Weaver staying ahead of Kyriakopoulos, right ahead of him, And then meanwhile, we've got Perez in tow, but you can see a massive pack of cars here, still within slipstream of each other, but spread out a little bit. So right now, some nice side-by-side action that we saw earlier on in the lap, but right now it's kind of a nice little bit of a train forming here between, well, basically looking through the left-hand side of your screen, it's pretty much from Weaver back all the way to Reagan, separated by about 5 seconds, so it's incredibly close. Speaking of incredibly close, Andres Friedrich is closing in on Felix Samoa's just at the fastest lap there, albeit a little bit quicker than Samoa's, less than a tenth separating them in lap time, but Friedrich is slowly reeling in that gap. The tire management is such an important thing in these races, doubly so here at a track like Canadian Tire, which has an abrasive surface, has a lot of very challenging corners for these drivers to negotiate, so it's really hard to try and keep those tires under you. We saw it last season with this race. That was the season finale that year, and I think we'll see it again in this race too. I think these drivers are going to have to try and manage those tires and just keep their tires under them, because we've seen it so many times throughout this season, throughout last season, and even the season before that. So I think Samoa's right now has to manage those tires and manage that gap, but right now he is just barely managing to hold off Andres Friedrich. He's closing up massively as they're about to enter turn 8 here. Andres Friedrich just isn't close enough to get the move done just yet.
Wow, and you can really see that draft at work, Ron, and that shot. Great camera work there by our producer, Joshua Wilkie. That gap was about 0.6 of a second when they came out of Moss Corner and onto the back straightaway. And as you can see, he just sucks right up to the back of that P1 car, got it down to just a couple of tenths, a tenth or two. And man, the slipstream's so powerful in these cars. And Friedrich may kind of be where he wants to be for the time being. We're only a quarter of the way through the race. He might just kind of follow Samoa, size him up, make sure that Samoa keeps looking back at him in the rearview mirror, and make a decision later on where he's going to make the move and what kind of move he's going to make. But you're going to see here again this draft at work. Let's see from our timing tower here, the gap between those cars currently 0.5, and you're going to see it plummeting 0.4 now, and it's going to get into the 0.3s momentarily. And as I said, we'll probably see Samoa's try to cover the inside, and we'll dare Friedrich to take a run on the outside entry to 8. Samoa's takes the normal line there, but we are going to see some action at that corner before this one is over.
I'll tell you, I was going to say before they went onto that massive Mario Andretti straightaway to round off this lap that I was not very confident with the gap that Samoa's had, only a half a second separating him and Friedrich by the time they entered that straightaway. I was fully expecting a move there, but he holds him off for now. I'm still not confident in Samoa's being able to hold off the lead. He's going to have to push his stuff quite badly, because Andres Friedrich, besides that bad start, he's put together a pretty good race. He's still very close to Samoa's right now, so there's still a lot to play for, and I'm sure Andres Friedrich is going to be pretty desperate to try and grab the win here. As you said, he's currently second in the season standings, so I think he'll try and do anything he can to grab the win tonight. Meanwhile, farther behind, we've got some action here with Weaver, who runs a little wide there, coming through the very tough right-hander of turn 3 there, and is very close to losing a position there to Perez, but holds that position off for now. Going through Quebec corner, ran a little wide, has a little bit of a snap before they enter Moss corner there and go onto the straightaway. So right now is Weaver struggling quite badly. He's feeling the pressure of the number 8 of Perez right behind him, and he's going to be feeling that driver going to the outside down this straightaway. It's going to be a drag race here before they enter turn 8. It's going to be a battle of the last of the late breakers. Actually, Perez starts to pull up ahead, and he manages to get that move done before they even get into the corner. So that's a beautiful move there from Perez to get done well before they entered the end of the straightaway. So Perez moving up to P6 now.
Yeah, Perez with a fantastic run there out of Moss. So critical to put the power down and get a good launch onto that Andretti straightaway. And that is frankly one thing that these cars are not great at, putting down the power at low speeds and in the lower gears. They're probably coming out of there in second gear with that feisty 4-cylinder turbo hitting the boost. Can definitely spin up those rear tires and blow your exit out of that complex and onto the back straightaway. And Perez with an epic run, really Weaver with no chance there. And meanwhile, Kyriakopoulos has moved up a couple. Speaking of that same train, he's moved up 3, now running in P5 with a What is his gap up to Walters? Pretty big gap to Walters, actually. Kyriakopoulos is kind of on an island right now, and you kind of need to train up to make any progress on this track. Meanwhile, that is Walters looking inside of Gonzaga and thinks better of it. Gonzaga takes the outside entry and still manages to outbreak Walters, who looked like he had a nose in there initially. And this one is not over, folks. These two drivers know each other well. We've seen them dice frequently throughout this season, and we'll keep an eye on this going forward because we're bound to see some more of that wheel-to-wheel action from these two.
Well, as we saw the side-by-side action, they were going down the straightaway. I was looking further up the road and seeing the side-by-side action between Samoas and Friedrich. They're going side-by-side before they enter turn 8, with Samoas pulling ahead, but only just. You can see that gap now is about a tenth of a second, incredibly close there. We might see Friedrich make a move coming into Moss corner here. He is incredibly close. He needs to back off a little bit, focus on a good exit here, because with how small that gap is, if he gets a good exit coming out of this corner and Samoas gets a bad one, I think he'll be in with a real good shot of taking the lead this time by. We're about halfway through this race. 8 laps of 20 so far on the board, and it's Andreas Friedrich pulling out of Felix Samoas' slipstream to try and get the move done before they get into turn 8. It's going to be that side-by-side racing that we always like to see here. They're still going side-by-side. He wasn't able to clear him before they enter turn 8. They're still going side-by-side through turn 8 and into turn 9. Some a little bit of drifting there with Friedrich, but Samoas gets that inside line, is going to maintain that position. That is some brilliant driving there from Samoas to hold off on that position. He is driving possibly the widest ever radical there's ever been. Meanwhile, farther behind, that battle between Gonzaga and Walters is heated up, with Walters moving into the final podium position. So David Walters right now having a pretty good race, moving up to Andreas. I don't think he'll catch up to Andreas Friedrich in that lead pack battle, but he's still putting together a very good race. So we've got a lot going on in this race, and we've already had a lot going on in this race. We might get some replays here soon to see some of the action that we haven't been able to see so far. So we're going to look at this battle that was going on with Andreas Friedrich and Samoas here. I believe this was the lap before we saw them going side by side. You can see them going side by side into turn 8. Friedrich is holding his own, trying to get the move done going into 9, but just wasn't close enough. Ooh, they looked very close to making contact there as they went into turn 9, but they managed to keep it clean. And then we're going to get another replay here to see, I believe this is Walters having a little bit of a nice battle here with Gonzaga. I believe this might be the other pass that he did to take that final podium position. He pulls out, going down the straightaway, manages to clear him going into turn 8. I believe actually, no, he doesn't. Gonzaga holds his line, but it's still pretty close. Ooh, there's a little bit of contact there. Very close to making contact with how bad the netcode has been this season. I'm surprised those cars weren't spearing off to the side of the track, but that was some very close racing there with Walters and Gonzaga. Meanwhile, they're still actually pulling away a little bit, Walters is. So you can see that gap has grown to about 10 car lengths separating the two. So I think Jorge Gonzaga's chances of grabbing a podium here in tonight's race are all but dashed. We're about halfway through this 20-lap affair here, which I believe is the longest race in terms of the amount of laps that we have all season long. So it plays into the idea of these drivers trying to manage those tires quite a lot. I think these drivers are really going to have to keep an eye on their tire wear. Meanwhile, a lot of these drivers are just throwing caution to the wind and starting to battle. We got this nice 4-car train here right towards the midfield of the pack.
Wow, and some really fantastic camera work on those replays, Josh, and really showing some epic driving. I knew we were going to see some side-by-side action here into turn 8. We saw a couple of pairs of drivers going through there, high level of trust, and of course great car control to make it all the way through those very difficult S's, folks. That section is tough by yourself in a practice session, much and much more so with the car inches to one side or another to get through there. We're seeing some fantastic driving from some of the best esports, certainly some of the best radical drivers in the world here this afternoon. What a treat. And riding along with Friedrich now, still polishing the bumper of Samoas. And I know that I know this feeling. I know he's getting sick of the look of the back of that thing. And maybe we'll see a little dive here into Moss. We do see some passes here occasionally, but it is a high-risk move. And
we've got the lap car up ahead.
Yeah, he's going to save his time and try to line something up here into turn 8 again. And looking at the gap now, it's down to 0.2 and falling. And Friedrich is going to have a crack here. Can he make that outside move into turn 8 work? He's tried it a couple of times without success. He's going to have to go a little deeper on the brakes if he wants that one to fly. And again, side by side, much the same as previous laps. And Samoas manages to squeak ahead before turn 9 there, I think it is. And then now turn 10 onto the straightaway. And my goodness, these guys are not done. And again, don't forget what Ron told you about tire management. You cannot beat these cars around this track for 20 laps at 10 tenths. The tires will fall off and lead to tragedy. So we'll have to keep an eye on how these guys' grip appears from up here as the race wears on. We're only on lap 12 of 20.
We've had some more drama farther behind. This is Jerome Lordeau here coming into Moss Corner. Not sure what happened here. Maybe a little bit of a curb hit here, or just a little bit of a spin there, a little bit of a drift, and then trying to do a donut there ahead. Nearly got clipped by a car there. That was a little bit of action there at Moss Corner, which is something that we did expect in this race. It's a very tricky corner to get right on. I believe we might have another casualty there. No, this is going through the final series of corners here with the same battle that our Lordeau was involved in before, and you can see a little bit of contact, argy-bargy action there involving Zalanka there, and unfortunately for him, he gets caught up in that in all the wrong ways. So unfortunately for the driver from Central Europe, he ends his race and ends his contention for a good result in a very unfortunate fashion. But we're approaching the end of this race, and I think these drivers are starting to feel the burn of those tires. You can see Friedrich running very wide coming through turn 1. He is stuck in that dirty air, but that gap is slowly increasing between the two of them. Maybe Friedrich is just saving up his stuff and trying to eye up an assault in the final few laps. Or maybe we've just reached that stage where Andres Friedrich has used up all of his stuff. Samoas hasn't been too fast. He's really been the slower car of these two, but he's just managed to put his car in the right position to hold off on that position. Meanwhile, Kadora, who we thought was pretty much out of this race, is actually holding on quite nicely and starting a battle here with Zengers. They're trying to make Kadora right now is trying to move up into P12. So that'd be an incredible result considering how hard of a contact he made coming out of turn 1 very early on in this race. But that action up towards the front, I think we should probably have our eyes on, because I think that'll probably be the one that we have to keep our eyes on. It's about 0.3 of a second separating them now, closing in a lot because they're on that back straightaway. But I think there's a lot to play for with this. Of course, they're battling for the win, and meanwhile, the battle for the last podium spot's hotting up quite nicely. The gap increased massively between these two. It was about 10 car lengths. It's now reduced pretty much by half, if not a little bit less than that. So Gonzaga right now is slowly reeling in Walters, trying to make sure that Walters knows, hey, this battle for the last podium spot is far from over. We're on lap 14 of 20 here. Only 6 laps left, which at a track like the Nürburgring that we'll be visiting in a week's time isn't, 6 laps is just massive there, but at a track like this, which is so incredibly short, only about a 1-minute 10 lap time some of these drivers were setting in practice and qualifying, it's not a whole lot of time to play for. So I think Gonzaga and Friedrich both have to play their cards right if they want to move up positions here.
Yeah, riding along with Gonzaga now here, and I think we're seeing Gonzaga's tire starting to fall off. He washed out, and so has Walters now. Gonzaga washed out coming down the hill back there. You just saw Walters washing out of Moss Corner there, and Gonzaga is going to have to run. I don't think there's anything Walters can do about it this time. Gonzaga with a better run and the inside line going into turn 8. Walters still looking, though, still looking around the outside, and he sticks with it. He'll have the inside into 9 here, and turn 10 will settle this one. Gonzaga is going to stay ahead and make that pass stick, but this one again is not over, folks. And last time through, we saw Gonzaga have a massive wiggle around turn 3, which is a bad place to get loose in these cars. So this one not done, and you see these tires starting to lose their grip. Oh my.
Gotta wonder if Walters is going to be able to claw back that position. Meanwhile, the battle up towards the front is actually hot up a little bit. Samoas and Friedrich have closed up a little bit. That gap is now about 0.3 of a second, and we got another lap car involved in this fight. But this time, they're not going to get out of the way here, so it's going to act as a little bit of a pick. The lap car goes off the track. Some very creative interpretations of the blue flag laws there. But Samoas ran a little bit wide there. I don't think he had a very good exit coming out of Moss Corner and going onto the Mario Andretti straightaway. So I think Friedrich might have a very good shot shot. As much as Samoa's hasn't had the fastest race car and hasn't had the fastest lap times of anyone, really, I think what he has is more confidence under braking. We might see that again here in turn 8. Friedrich is going to have to pull off a ballsy move here if he wants to get it done. He might force his will a little bit here. No, he gets the door closed on him before they go into turn 9. So Andres Friedrich is basically being bullied by Felix Samoa's up ahead. He's tried everything in the book to find a way to get past his adversary from Portugal, but unfortunately for him, he just has not been able to pull that move off. So I'm sure Andres Friedrich at this point, he has the red gloves on. He is seeing the red mist now, and he actually touched the grass there. That could have been a disaster there if he hit the grass a little bit earlier. That small little jutting out bit of the grass, probably about 500 feet down the track, actually has a little bit of a hop to it. So if he hit that, we would have seen a flying radical there. So thankfully for Andres Friedrich's sake, he is staying on track, but that small little mistake has cost him a little bit of time, but he's closed up a little bit in the preceding corners. He's going to try and focus on that exit. That's all he has to do, but I say that. He ran a little bit wide, hit that curb, got a little bit janky there, a little bit of lawn mowing there as well. So Andres Friedrich, what he needs to do is just focus all his attention on closing up that gap, not having a bad run coming out of Moss Corner, and just focusing everything he can on a good run coming through the Mario Andretti straightaway. And what he needs to do is try and clear Samoa's, or just be farther along side by side with him, because every time they've gone into that corner side by side so far, as Gonzaga and Walters are going side by side, with Walters actually gaining that position there. So Walters now leapfrogs back into P3. This is a fantastic battle that these two have been having. Nearly made contact coming through the final corner. So a lot of these drivers are heating up. The action is getting real tense. Anyone watching wherever you are across the world here on Apex Racing TV, there's nothing new to the Radical Racing Challenge, and I'm sure it'll be it's definitely not going to be a departure 1 week's time when we round this season off at the Nordschleife. That'll be a fantastic race, the spiritual season finale for these cars. But this is going to be pretty close, not only for the battle for the final podium position, but also the battle for the if I can spit my words out. It'll be great for the battle between these two for the final podium spot. It'll also be a fantastic battle for the win here. There's going to be some great stuff in the final few moments of this race.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, Ron, whether Friedrich just wants to give up on this turn 8 and try to set up a pass somewhere else. He's not really getting anything done here, taking this outside entry. If it was me, I might be tempted just to just stay on Samoa's bumper there, forget that pass, and maybe try to set him up going into Moss. Or little love tap there. Friedrich just taps the back of Samoa's, causes him to turn in that snake section coming onto the front straight, and that is it for that battle. Friedrich ran out of patience there. And
farther behind, there's contact between Gonzaga and Walters. There's more contact right behind them. I was just seeing that in the corner of my eye. Sorry to cut you off there, JR. But right as I said, about probably about a half a minute earlier, I was gonna say these battles were gonna be incredibly close, and just as I say that, the two battles ended in disaster. This is the one that we were following. I was thinking Andres Friedrich might try and do a NASCAR style move and just try and give him the bump and run, but unfortunately for him, he bumped Samoa's and gave himself the run off the track. So sadly for Friedrich, his chances of winning this race are donezo. When he was trying to get all his bearings straight, this action was going on behind. Gonzaga tries to claw back that position there. They're very close there, and Walters drifts out a little bit, makes contact there, and spins Gonzaga out. So that battle between those two has cooled down quite badly. I'm sure, despite the fact that the battle is cooled off, I'm sure Gonzaga is feeling hot right now. He's got to be frustrated with his fellow competitor.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, he definitely had a little help there, and I'm afraid, I think if I was a steward, I wouldn't be putting that on Walters. I think Gonzaga turned down on him when he didn't have the space to do it. And that can happen after dicing with the same car lap after lap, all those position swaps, driving the car harder and harder. And we've seen Gonzaga's car sliding all over the track, just kind of ran out of grip and ran out of patience there as the race is ticking away. And that has cost Gonzaga, who has fallen all the way to P6. Now it's Samoa's from Friedrich, from Walters for your podium positions. Kyriakopoulos, due to Walters slowing down after that contact, is sniffing around a little bit. It looks like he's got about 7/10 gap ahead to Walters with a lap and a half remaining. We'll see if he's able to get something done. He is going to be in draft range here coming onto the back straightaway. So we'll see if Kyriakopoulos wants to take a go at Walters, as the action in this one has been nonstop up in Canada. Wow.
Like, I imagine that Walters' little bit of sportsmanship from him might turn into a detriment. He slowed down a little bit, just hoping that Gonzaga would catch up, but Gonzaga was taking quite a long time to get his bearings straight after that incident, and one man that's had his bearings straight all throughout this race is Felix Samoas, who's taken the white flag and actually sets the fastest lap in doing so at a 1:12.6. So Felix Samoas is driving on rails right now. Even without that incident for Andreas Friedrich, as you said, I think chances are he probably wouldn't have gone the win anyway. Samoas was probably saving up his tires for a last lap assault, and now that he's got that massive gap between him and Friedrich, he doesn't really have anything to lose. So Samoas is pulling away to a very comfortable victory. Meanwhile, the action farther behind with this tight pack between Weaver, Murata, and Lowe has heated up quite well. Murata and Weaver are pretty close here. We might see a move here between these two. We might also see some action. Actually, I say that they're pretty far apart between Walters and Kyriakopoulos. They're about 7/10 of a second and 9/10 of a second separating them, so that action has cooled off a little bit. So I think we may have to keep an eye on this battle and keep an eye on this one as well between Walters and Kyriakopoulos. If there's any sort of mistake, that'll probably be it. That'll probably be the only way that we might see an overtake here. Meanwhile, I think Felix Samoas is on his way to a very comfortable victory.
Yeah, Kyriakopoulos can't quite close it down, and there's Samoas taking the checker, and he has set the fastest lap. You got to think that covering the inside in defense to turn 8 has slowed him up this entire race, and as soon as he lost Friedrich, he was able to put down a heater, which turned out to be a 1:12.67, which I think is ahead of even the pole time put down by Friedrich during qualifying. So here we are coming across the line here. It's going to be Samoas from Friedrich, Walters, Kyriakopoulos from Perez, who's made the top 5. Gonzaga, after that willing and fantastic battle earlier, loses that with that little bit of contact with Walters. He'll fall to P6. Weaver, then Murata, Lowe, and Zilanka will make up your top 10. Then Reagan Kadura, Zingers, Lardo, Bonovitz, and Torres showing there is still running, showing 2 laps down, but he is going to take the checker as well. And my goodness, action-packed. What a duel, but with Friedrich and Samoas and Walters and Gonzaga as well. And you can really tell what it takes to drive these cars fast. You get to ration the tires and drive on the ragged edge of destruction, which we saw here for 20 laps. It absolutely lived up to my expectations, Ron.
The best part about the series, though, is that even with all of the beating and banging and roughing each other up throughout this race, these drivers still have an immense amount of respect for each other. Drivers are complimenting each other, talking after the checkered flag. It's great to have a nice community of racers that are so united with these radicals. You know, there's a lot of discussion going on in the radical forums about what the future of the series could look like, whether there's the possibility of making a multi-class racing with the SR8s, or whether there's some talk about even the SR3, the radical SR3 being added into the game, which I personally think is a little bit far-fetched. There's a lot going on in the community. There's a lot of a little bit of a bad stigma with this community as well after the let's face it, crappy way that this car drove 2 seasons ago. But the wonderful people at iRacing and the wonderful people at the Radicals have worked to improve this car, and it drives like a dream at this point. So, and it also puts on some fantastic racing. We've seen it all throughout the season. In the 10 previous races before tonight, we've had great racing action. Here we had one of the best races I've seen in this series. So it's been great to have some fantastic racing, and it's nice to have a good community as well. And a lot of these drivers talking with each other, giving each other congrats. It's great to cover a series with such a unique community.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. And taking a peek outside the door here, it looks like we have our winner, Felix Samoas, waiting to join us here in the booth. So Felix, great run today. You took the lead away from Friedrich in turn 1, essentially off the start, and held it for a pretty exciting 20 laps there. So yeah. What was your impression of the action today?
Yeah, it was stressful race, a good race, good fun, but under pressure until that bad luck from Andreas. As you said, so I was lucky in the start. Not that I had such a good start, but Andreas spun his wheels. So, and then I think both of us had very similar pace. I was probably stronger in the first sector, and he was stronger on the second sector. Yes, there is draft, but there's also the wake from aerodynamics. So it's not that easy to pass with this car on this track, although we have that huge back straight. So I knew that as long as I would keep my car on the inside, braking at the end of the back straight, my chances of staying in front were quite good, and that was what happened. It was good fun, intensive but fun.
Yeah, you put on quite a show. Great driving by both of you. You had that side-by-side entry into turn 8 a couple times. We have seen some outside passes there, and Friedrich definitely gave it a high degree of effort to try to get that done, but you were able to break a little deeper and keep him off. But man, what a fantastic show. You had a couple 3-4 laps in a row that looked like replays of each other entering that turn 8 side by side, and that's a high stress moment and a high trust moment. So talk to us a little bit about what it's like to kind of build this community that you've built and get to know the other drivers and develop a degree of trust that allows you to make those kind of maneuvers during these races.
Yeah, that is an important factor. I've raced with Andreas, and I watch his videos. He normally posts on YouTube every single race. I normally watch, and he's a very clean, very safe driver. So I knew that as long as I give him enough space, the probability is not going to do any mistake or anything that would put my car in danger. So I was kind of safe in that regard. So I felt safe to battle with him. And as you said, it is important that you know the people that you are racing with. Yeah, if it were other people, I would probably have to give more room, and yeah.
Yeah, well, that was absolutely fantastic, Felix, and congratulations on an epic run. And wrapping up here, is there anybody you would like to thank or give a shout out to this afternoon?
Yeah, to Andreas, he put up a awesome fight. To you guys on the commentary, doing a very good job. It's always entertaining. I mean, even when I don't race, normally I watch the races. If not live, I rewatch the broadcast. So to you, a big shout out to you, to your work there also.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome. I know, speaking on behalf of myself and Ron and Josh, we absolutely love doing these broadcasts together. You guys are put on some fantastic races, and it's our pleasure to be here to call them for you. So thank you so much, and congratulations again. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I've lost track of myself here. Just a moment.
I believe I think we've got a lot more drivers waiting in the hallway. I don't know if maybe the snacks that we have here in the other virtual commentary booth have attracted a lot of these drivers, because we have a lot showing up. So, JR,
Yeah.
Would you like to take this next interview,
Yeah.
or would you like me to take it?
Yeah, let's bring in Jorge Gonzaga, and you can run through with him his kind of heartbreaking last couple of laps there.
Jorge, thank you so much for joining us. And I was joking before we brought you in here that there's some snacks here in the other commentary booth that must have attracted a lot of you drivers in. But you had a very up and down race, was involved in that great battle there with Walter. So talk us through your race there.
Yeah, no, well, David is really fast, and we race a lot together in other series and in the Radicals, so there's a lot of respect, and I think you kind of noticed that. That content was really unfortunate. I went to watch the replay, and there's like a 1 foot net code on the beginning, initial contact, and it was inevitable. But fair play. We were battling hard. It was inevitable. There was the 3rd place in fight. I wanted to keep the distance to Dennis. So I was trying not to battle too hard, and I know David had more pace than I, but for some reason he couldn't get the lap times, and so I was actually dreading to get closer to him, because I know we were going to lose for Dennis, and it was unfortunate, but it was a really good race, and kudos to David, and congrats on the 3rd place to him, and to Felix and Andreas as well. Really good result.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, involving the battle that was between Andreas Friedrich and Felix there. right before you and David made contact there in the other second to last corner, they had made contact in the exact same corner. So did y'all pay attention to that? Did y'all notice that at the time, or was that just kind of a like an afterthought at the time where you had just focused on the racing?
No, I think it's the corner, and it's a particularity of the track because that's the only place where you can really overtake. So, and there's a really intense battling to get that inside line on the penultimate corner. So it's always, that's where usually the racing incidents on this track happen, and so it's inevitable, and especially on the last laps when people start making the moves and the attacks start. So it's inevitable that happens.
I'll tell you, this race, this track has put on some great racing throughout last season and this season as well. So fingers crossed it comes back for next season. But the next round to cap this season 4 off here this year is the Nordschleife. So how do you feel coming into that race?
I'm gonna run away, and that's the reason why I came today, is to say goodbyes, because it's gonna be my last race of the season. But yeah, I stay away from the Nordschleife. It's love-hate. It's really nice to do hot lapping, but racing in there is yeah, my fist in the wall is, I don't know, it's super frustrating. So I try to stay away. So, but I might do one race or two just for the fun of it. But yeah, I'm not gonna race next week, but I wish all the good luck to all the guys in there, and I'm sure it will be chaotic because there will be like probably 2 stints, 2 splits, and it's gonna be a lot of non-radical drivers. So because on this community obviously there's a lot of respect, so when it comes to the Nordschleife is chaos. So that's why I try to stay away. It's like week 13 for me. Yeah.
And plus, we also had the Ringmaster Series that raced these cars at that track a few weeks ago, so that could be the reason why we have some more participation. Fingers crossed. I'm sure it will be a good race, but I can also understand the reason why you might want to avoid that track. I don't really blame you for that. So I'll ask you one quick question here before we wrap things off with you. There's been a lot of discussion in the Radical forums about what could be done to try and improve the participation this season, so I'll put you on the hot seat and kind of ask you about the discussion going on about possibly making this a multi-class series with the S8s, the SR8. So what do you think of that, about that idea?
Well, obviously there's the 2 sides. One side defends the SR8, the other side defends the SR10. I need to admit I'm biased to the SR10. I like the SR8, but I think it's we're in 2023. And we drive the latest car, and I think that's what the competition is all about. And it doesn't matter what car we have. What matters is there is the competition. The organization sets a car for us, and we need to do our best with the car, right? So obviously the SR8 is a completely different dynamic. It's much more fun to drive, but I to be honest, it's really complicated to say bring back the SR8 or stick with the SR10 or make a multi-class. There's conversations about that. I don't know, maybe doing the SR10 free would help. That would be one of the key points in terms of the track selection. Obviously, community has been doing a great job with that as well. Obviously, there's some we tend to go to the most popular tracks, which sometimes deters a bit what people want to race. I don't know. It's kind of a bit gray zone, right? But I say we should stick to the SR10. Maybe make it free to try to increase the audience. I don't know. That would be my suggestion.
I agree with what you said there in terms of trying to focus on modern cars. I mean, the SR8 is one of the oldest cars still not part of legacy content on the iRacing platform, so I can understand the discussion there about just trying to stick with the SR10. I mean, me personally, I'm more of an open wheel guy, but I think the car has its redeeming qualities. It's still a fun car to drive, and from the racing action that we've seen all season long, it puts on some great racing too, and you were definitely part of that tonight, Jorge. Thank you so much for joining us, and sorry we won't see you in 1 week's time at the Nordschleife, so fingers crossed we'll see you on week 1 in season 1 for 2024.
Absolutely, I'll be here. Thank you guys. Great job, by the way. Thank you for all your effort and work throughout the season. You guys did an amazing job.
Well, thank you, Jorge. We appreciate that.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys. Bye.
All right, and our last Yeah, our last person hanging around the snack bar outside in the hall is Dennis Kyriakopoulos. So we'll get him in here. And Dennis, very well done. You are our hard charger today. Both you and Juan Perez gained 4 positions from your qualifying. And I'll tell you, it looked to me if this race was 21 laps instead of 22, you might have had a crack at Walters there at the end. So how'd this race go for you?
As you can see, it was a really good race. The qualifications didn't go as planned. I knew I had the pace to go much faster. I lost some time in the beginning of the race with other drivers that I couldn't pass. And then when the track was open, I could really try my best and catch these guys in front. But I knew that without a mistake from their part, I couldn't pass them. Mistake happened, and I was able to catch these guys. And as you said, with one more lap, maybe I could have tried something on David.
Yeah, very solid effort, and to be clear, when Dennis moved up 4 positions, those weren't 4 accidents that happened in front of him. He was pulling off legit passes on his competitors, and you put on a fantastic drive. We just spoke to Jorge. I don't know if you had a chance to listen in on that, but it sounds like he's taking a pass on the green hell just because to avoid the frustration level. What are your thoughts about next week at Nordschleife?
I'm a bit on Jorge's side. Not sure I'm gonna race there. We'll see.
Okay, well, I would certainly encourage you to, man. You're one of our favorite drivers. You show up and drive well and drive hard and clean every week. So understand if you want to take a pass, but it would be great to see you and everybody out there. We've really come to admire some of these drivers in the Radical community and the way you guys race clean and drive in a trusting, respectful manner. It really has been a pleasure calling these races for you. So if we don't see you this week, thanks very much for the opportunity to call these races, and thanks for showing up and putting on a great show for our audience here at Apex Racing TV. So to wrap it up, is there anybody you want to give thanks to or give a shout out to?
First thing, I want to say that thank you for your kind words, and it might make a difference for next week. To be honest, hearing those words, I think I might do the effort to race.
Excellent.
And
JR the negotiator.
Yeah, for shout out, of course, all the Radical regulars and the guys that were in the race. So David, Walters, Jorge, of course, Andreas, and excellent drive from Felix. There are the regulars that weren't here. I hope that I will see them in Nordschleife if I race.
Yeah, fantastic. And as we're speaking to you, I think Josh is just showing an epic outside move that you made there into turn 8. A little bit of banging there on the 11 car. Not sure who that was. I guess it was Weaver. But yeah, fantastic job pushing your way forward in the field. And happy to hear that we might see you next week. So thank you very much for coming by, Dennis. And yeah, we'll keep an eye out for you. And folks, that was Dennis Kyriakopoulos, your P4 finisher, moving up from his P8 qualifying. So he put on an outstanding show today. And speaking of shows, folks, we are not just about the Radicals here at Apex Racing TV. We have some of the best cars, best tracks, and best esports drivers in the business 7 days a week. And just coming up this weekend, as I slowly and awkwardly take my notes out, we've got a couple of Ray esports events. Formula Ford Weekend Warriors are running at Road Atlanta on Saturday. Weekend Warriors, Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors are running at Sears Point, Sonoma. So those are a couple of great races. And next week kicks off strong with the Rickmatech World Challenge. That is mixed class racing at the Red Bull Ring. And any fans who have participated in IMSA last week know that that's pretty rough and tumble over at the RBR. So if you want to check that out or any of our offerings here on Apex Racing TV, don't forget to subscribe. And when you subscribe, hit that notification button to make sure that you don't miss anything. Wow, man, that was fantastic. It was nice to spend some time with some of our drivers here, Ron. And what are your thoughts looking forward to the Green Hell?
Well, honestly, I think it's going to be drama-packed. I'll be brutally honest and say that I haven't actually called a race from the Nordschleife since week 2 of season 3. So it'll be nice to have the season finale back. The last time I called a radical race that was the season finale at the Nordschleife was actually my first broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, and I had no camera feed throughout it. So it'll be nice to commentate a season finale here with the radicals and actually be able to see what's going on. And yeah, I think it'll be dramatic for sure. I think we'll see a lot of accidents. And speaking of accidents, your comment there that the other action in the Rennsport World Challenge race is going to be dramatic and we might see some rough and tumble racing there is not filling me with too much confidence, considering I do the officiating for that series. I'm already dreading next Monday. But for the viewers at Apex Racing TV, I'm sure the Rennsport World Challenge and the Sports Car Series, which is also here on Apex Racing TV, those are always some great races, some always great battling all throughout the other races there. So we've got a lot of action here on Apex Racing TV, a lot of action coming up on the Radical Racing Challenge, and hopefully the viewers here on Apex can tune in a week's time, because I'm sure the race at the Nordschleife is going to be no different than the one we saw here at Mosport.
Yeah, that is going to be awesome. And Ron, I'll send you over that list of the corner names. There's 122 of them, and I'm expecting accurate calls on that with the accurate German pronunciation. So you got about a week to get that sorted. In the meantime, folks, J.R. Gregory here signing off with Apex Racing TV's presentation of the Radical Racing Challenge on behalf of myself, my partner Racing Ron Mons, and our producer Joshua Wilkie. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Friday. Happy Thanksgiving for our American audience, and have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you next week.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.